Today on the official Marvel podcast, we get an inside peek at the upcoming series from Marvel Animation, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, with Marvel Studios Executive of Production Development, Dana Vasquez-Eberhardt.
There are a couple different ways that you can tell a Peter Parker story, a Spider-Man story. This particular project starts with Peter in his freshman year.
And we are joined by Fiorenzo Omenetto, a biomedical engineering professor, to tell us all about silk spiderwebbing and its use cases, which means we are so close to real-life web slinging. That is how I'm reading this.
It seems like it's a superhero material, if you will. It does so many things that we couldn't even anticipate.
We've also got a deep dive on the comic book history of the magical Nico Minoru.
I'm Preeti Chibber.
I'm Raylo.
And this is the official Marvel podcast. I am so excited for today's episode because I don't know if you know this about me. However, I have been called in the press a Spider-Man superfan. Preeti Chibber.
No, Preeti. I've never known this about you before in my life. Even before I actually met you, I never knew this about you. It's not like I saw it over Instagram, all over Twitter.
I don't know how you could have missed Publishers Weekly circa August 2020.
She has the cutout of the article, y'all. It's probably in your wallet, Preeti.
It's definitely on my website.
Well, tell me why you're so excited right now, Preeti. I gotta hear it.
Because Spider-Man, our wonderful disaster, our poor boy who tries so hard, no matter what the world throws at him, no matter how stinky he ends up, how gross his suit is, how many fights he gets into, he keeps going. And that's why he's the greatest superhero of all time. How could I not be the most excited person you've ever met in your life?
Well, I'm also hyped, especially when it comes to our first guest. Dana Vasquez-Eberhardt is the executive of production and development at Marvel Studios, and she's here to tell us all about the upcoming animated series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which we've only seen small glimpses of, but oh my gosh, the animation looks like they've already nailed it.
I'm so excited to hear what she's gonna say.
So I'm sitting here with someone very exciting, Dana Vasquez-Eberhardt, who is the Vice President of Animation at Marvel Studios. Dana, tell us a little bit about your role at Marvel.
So I find myself in the incredible position of coming into Marvel Studios when the studio expanded from being a feature company, expanded into live action streaming with WandaVision, and then said, hey, how about all those great animation toys over there? Let's keep making stuff. And that started with What If. So my role is I'm head of animation over here at Marvel Studios. I work with an amazing group of people and soup to nuts. From the inception of an idea, story, it's like, hey, what kind of characters do we want to play with? Developing those projects, getting them up on their feet when we're in production, from the premise of the script to the first storyboard to animation coming back to casting our voice actors to listening to these amazing scores, getting it into post-production, and then eventually on Disney+. So all the way through.
That's incredible. So you have seen the conception of this since the idea, basically.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody, but I get to watch cartoons for a living. So don't. I feel like I've cheated the system.
Everyone's emailing you tomorrow. How do I get this job? How can I do it as well? Well, you've worked on a lot of animated projects with Marvel thus far. I Am Groot. Now we're talking about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So how does this show fit into the greater MCU?
You know, the conceit of it was, well, what happened in that time within MCU, and what if things, jagged one way or jagged another with the multiverse of it all? There are a couple different ways that you can tell a Peter Parker story, a Spider-Man story. For those that are sort of looking for more of the inside dope, this is a script-driven show. This particular project starts with Peter in his freshman year. In the most recent Spider-Man movies, Tom Holland, we meet Peter formally in Homecoming, full board, coming in, he's a sophomore. Well, what happens when he's like just into school with all of the newness that is. And then from there, it kind of took off.
Right. Well, we actually had Jeff Trammell, who's the Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man showrunner, on the show back in August. And he spoke about some of the supporting characters that join Peter along in the story. So how did you all decide which additional characters would be a part of the show?
You know, it wasn't sort of like, oh, we can pick anyone. So this character and that character and this character. It comes from, and it came from a place of really love of Peter and love of Spider-Man and love of this universe. And who would you love to see him mixing with and mixing it up with? We were starting at a point in the MCU where civil wars happened. So the Sokovia Accords have been ratified. It's modern day. And then Peter gets to his first day at Midtown. So we meet him like, I'm going to Midtown. He's very excited. He gets to his first day. And then a thing happens, which I'm going to try and dance around, but a major thing happens. And then there goes our branch. So it's a very recognizable world, but Peter doesn't end up going to Midtown. So in a world where he never met Ned, he never met MJ, who might he run into? So I'm 90% sure it was Jeff's brilliant idea to introduce the idea of Nico Minoru, who fans might know from, and hopefully do know because she's an awesome character on her own, and so is Runaways, but she's from Runaways. And Nico's such a great fit for Peter. She's very different from Ned, and they just fit so well together. Same sort of thing we have in this show, Lonnie Lincoln. And Lonnie Lincoln in the canon, one is off to the side. And Lonnie in the show is amazing. Lonnie and Peter actually have this really wonderful, contrasting but complementary parallel journey. And in this beautiful ensemble of characters, they trade and sometimes share more or less being the heart and soul of what this show is. The paths they go on, they kind of like in a parallel fashion traverse together as friends, but also just in their separate journeys, is really great.
Now, you could put all of that on paper, of course. You can write down the characters to really mesh together with their dialogue. But obviously, it is so different when you have to assemble the cast that you want to portray that same chemistry. And obviously, voice actors, voice casting is a huge part of that. No secret that you've assembled an insane cast for this show.
Well, we have an amazing casting director in a woman by the name of Sarah Jane Sherman. But it was a deceptively simple process. We got an alley-oop from What If. Hudson Thames, who plays Peter Parker in What If, there was no debate, there was no discussion from anybody, Jeff included. It's like, oh yeah, so Hudson is Peter Parker, Spider-Man. So where do we go from there? Eugene Bird as Lonnie Lincoln does an amazing job. Grace Song as Nico Minoru. Zeno Robinson as Harry Osborn. And like the list goes on and on. Kathy Ang, Alex Lee.
We even got the return of Charlie Cox, which is incredible, I hear.
Daredevil is in season 1.
Right.
And yeah, Charlie Cox very graciously was down to play with us. So that's great. I would say the real thrill of all of our casts that we almost can't believe that we had the good fortune to be able to say is with us is Coleman Domingo as Norman Osborn, who, again, not only an incredibly lovely person, but just the depth and fun. And it's fun because it's generally fun because there are certain moments that make you like laugh out loud and guffaw, but it's fun because of just the depth that character goes to, the clear fun that Coleman has with playing this character for all of these great heartfelt moments with Peter, these moments where he's essentially telling Peter to toughen up, or where he's a little bit shocked by Peter doing a thing, or you know, and every variety in between there, where Peter's like black and white, night and day, it's right or wrong. And part of that is a product of youth. Norman operates in a world of grace.
That's the most compelling part of his character, though.
It is the most compelling
Yes.
part of his character. So to see these two characters, but so see and to hear Hudson bring all of his amazing qualities when he's performing as Peter up with Norman, and that's just one of an amazing set of like pairings and groupings in the show. This whole cast is just amazing.
I cannot wait to witness that, especially paralleled with, I'm thinking about all the brief, as of yet, glimpses we've gotten of the animation style for the show. What were the decisions behind the specific appearance and look of the show?
It's one of the most exciting parts about working here on animation at Marvel Studios at this time. There is no house style for animation. This is a studio that's known for and excels at like pushing the envelope and really having to top what came before them, because that's not only the expectation of audiences, but that's the desire for what happens creatively in here. So far, I Am Groot, What If, X-Men 97, those have all had very distinct looks, and that continues on with Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And it comes from the simple question, what's going to serve the story best? Like it's that simple and that complicated at the same time. It's really driven creatively. Actually, what appealed to all of us, myself, Jeff, Marvel Studios, we're coming into a legacy and embracing that legacy and want to celebrate that legacy. So let's start with the legacy. So the look of the show, take it to its roots. This is going to be an evergreen show, but we're celebrating legacy. Let's start there. Let's start with Toth, Romita Sr., Ditko, those like iconic 60s comic book styles. But people are like, oh, it's comic books. But those artists in particular, their line work, their use of heavy blacks, within, lines and crevices and shadows. There's a chunky quality. It's also very graceful of a time. It immediately evokes nostalgia. It's very active. Mostly because when I think of that style, I think of all those great active poses and, everything like the comics. There's an energy in those characters. There's an energy in those poses. There's an energy in that design that is very classic. So the show is modern. It has a vintage look, a 60s look. And then you put that together with the amazing talent of the team who is writing and boarding and designing, put that together with, as technology jumps forward, there's just so much we can do to really push, CG. It's like there's no wrong answer as long as it comes from a genuinely creative desire.
Well, Dana, you're so incredible about talking up your team and just providing the right insight into all these incredible things that everyone around you has been doing to put this show together. I want to ask you, as Dana the creator, Dana the Marvel fan, what do you think is the best part of the show? I mean, what are you hoping that fans like yourself take away from it?
I hope it's two things, because it's what I take away from it. Every time I have read something, premise and outline, a script, every time I've watched something, a storyboard, an animatic, our first animation passes, every time I've heard something, our voice cast, our score, and when all those things are put together, there are some projects and properties that just lift you up. Like you walk away and you feel lighter and happier. And that's not even necessarily because it was a sunshiny story and everyone fell in love and everything worked out and it's all great. There are some awesomely dark places we go. And I say awesomely dark because in order for heroes to rise, they have to hit bottom. And we go there. This is a TVG show. It is totally for all audiences. I am excited for kids of all ages to take a look. I hope what people take away is that it's a beautiful combination of everything that is canonically loved about Peter, that is like why you go to a Spider-Man show, why you seek out Peter Parker as your hero of choice, as your beacon, but also that it is unique. It's unique because of the look. It's unique because the way that these stories are being told is different, and they're differences that are so wonderful and loud, triumphantly loud in the subtlety of how the stories are crafted. And because of that combination of things, I love these characters. Like I cannot begin to tell you. You probably gleaned a little bit of it today, but I am so invested in these kids, but in this ensemble. This is very much a Spider-Man show and a Peter Parker show, but this is an ensemble Spider-Man show in a way that I've never seen it outside of live action before, because of all the elements that just make up these incredibly deep, dynamic characters and the world that they inhabit and that it get big. It's a celebration of all those things. And it's, again, like at the end of the day, it's everything unique and it's everything quote unquote traditional, because I think what makes me feel best about it is it just sings so loudly and shines so brightly as why Peter's that beacon. He's a version of what we all like to be, that we're put on this earth for a certain amount of time to make it a better place.
I have maybe goosebumps, maybe spidey tingling. I'm not sure. I am so excited to watch it.
It's your whole heart. It's my whole heart when I watch it, and I get to work on it. So it's like
that's the best part.
All of us who watch it over and over again, like I'm very excited for everyone to take away that joy.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us, Dana. I can't wait to watch the show.
I know. I'm so excited.
Well, I'll cry along with you. Honestly, I love crying to animation. After X-Men, it's now just a regular thing.
This won't be quite as much of a stab to the heart.
It'll just be growth and looking at myself, in the mirror.
Exactly. This will be a little bit more introspective and that sweet sadness and beauty of growing up, and also that sweet triumph of growing up. Whereas X-Men's like, oh my God, my heart.
I know. I needed therapy after that.
Yeah, it's you're not alone, sister.
I cannot wait for this show. I mean, I already said that, but genuinely, I can't wait for this show.
I mean, I am also excited to see baby Peter in his earliest days, stopping crime, whipping his webs, swinging around. I mean, this show cannot come soon enough.
Speaking of thwipping webs.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You like that transition? I thought it was good. Because there is a biomedical engineer and fellow Spider-Man fan, we love a comics-influenced professional journey, who is working around the clock to make silk webbing a real thing.
Okay, you mentioned this a little bit earlier. I'm kind of blown away. So is web slinging is becoming a genuine thing in reality to flip around?
Yes. Well, no, sort of. Well, almost. We're not quite there yet. But we are getting close to being able to lift super heavy objects with it, which means we're just a few steps away. Mm-hmm. Here to tell us more about it is official Marvel podcast host and friend Quinn Lamar, as he's joined by Fiorenzo Omenetto, professor of biomedical engineering.
I'm a professor of biomedical engineering here at Tufts University, and I direct a lab called the Silk Lab. And it's a material science lab, and we work on all possible transformation of silk as a biomaterial.
You study the use of silk as a material platform for advanced technology.
That's correct. My background is really not in biomaterials. My background is in photonics and electronics, and I stumbled upon silk by mistake. And so one thing led to the other, and now silk has become sort of this material of wonder that we study, because it seems like it's a superhero material, if you will. It does so many things that we couldn't even anticipate that it would do. In a certain sense, we go back to what silk is when it's getting spun by the caterpillar, and so we take the fibers, we turn them into a liquid. And then once we have this liquid, we use it as our starting point to build multiple things.
What situations could you imagine it being useful in?
I think the best way to think about it is that you have a material that this liquid, basically that we use to build things, is water and a protein. So the protein is called fibroin. And it's like playing with Legos in a certain sense, where your Lego brick is this piece of fibroin protein. And so it's up to you how you assemble these proteins together. And once you have an infinite set of Legos, you can build whatever you want. You can build a car, a castle, etc. And the reason that it's exciting is that the materials that you make can be implanted, can be eaten. They dissolve harmlessly in the environment. And when you transform them, from the liquid to a solid, if you mix in something that usually has to be refrigerated, or, something that is biologically delicate, they act as a preservative for that material. So you can make, you can protect some of these, biological agents, like, for example, therapeutics, and give them a shape, and you don't need to refrigerate them anymore.
That's a lot. That's a big thing to think about, a big question. And you've been pretty open in articles that a lot of your research has been inspired by Spider-Man and his web slinging. And so you're actually hoping that your research would kind of like translate in that way, similarly, where like it could, possibly lift an object heavier than its own weight.
Well, so first of all, I have to say that it's not the work of one person. My lab is pretty big, and we have a bunch of people, and specifically the person that has taken the adhesive work by charge is a big comic book fan. So he certainly, I can say that I am certainly inspired, but he is genuinely deeply inspired by this. And how does it work, and how do we imagine these things? Is we're kind of driven. I think that one of the main things is that we're driven by material surprise. We believe really that materials should do unexpected things to innovate. And in a way, one of these things is that these materials are sticky, and these materials have been used in nature to generate fiber. So what if you could just eject the fibers with, like a superhero does, and then the fiber is sticky? And what if it sticks to something? And now suddenly you're not generating a fiber anymore, but you're generating a sticky fiber that could retrieve objects and could do, a variety of things.
So with more research and development, like what would you say would be possibly the heaviest object that you would be able to pick up with this?
Well, it's always hard to speculate in these things, but it's silk itself has a very impressive combination of tensile strength and elasticity. It's one of its superpowers, and that allows a lot to absorb a lot of energy and to support very heavy loads. And so when we engineer our materials, some of these properties come along naturally because our building blocks are the same building blocks that you would have in natural silk. So we could think about having a lot of weight supported without breaking. Once upon a time, we actually had an article published way before the slinging thing, where we made a spider web. We made a very, very light little spider web, and we hung a weight from it. And that spider web was able to hold 4,000 times its weight.
Wow.
So, maybe we could have someday a real life homage to Spider-Man.
That's really cool, though. And now we know that Spidey, like he makes a synthetic web, whereas like yours seems like it is more at the base of the natural production. So like that's one difference.
Yes, and I mean we are always striving to keep the materials naturally derived. It's sort of like, at the core of also what we do, there's like, being inspired by the way that nature builds things. So literally, maybe not replicating what comes from a radioactive spider bite, but actually looking at spiders and silkworms and seeing what they do. And the reason why we use silkworms rather than spiders is that there's just much more silk, because spiders are not as friendly creatures as caterpillars are.
I would imagine that is correct. So as we know, like Spider-Man has his cartridges that he's created, and he is able to like change them out really quick and, midair when he's in the middle of a fight, whatever it may be. So is it possible that this is something that could be as small as a wrist shooter? Like how compact would this be?
I mean, why not? This is, effectively you could have cartridges of liquid, and then you could swap them out, and you can eject these things. You could certainly envision it to be portable. Right now we have our little flasks in the lab, and so we put the solution in a syringe and we eject it. So, with a little bit more design, maybe we could we could do something a bit more interchangeable.
I think this is really big, groundbreaking stuff. Thank you so much for being here with us, Fiorenzo, and talking to us about this.
Thank you, Quinn. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, fine. We may still be a few years out from actually web slinging around the city, but we really only have a few weeks until, get this, the January 29th premiere of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
Do I have a countdown calendar set as my lock screen? Who is to say?
Yes, obviously, yes.
Maybe.
But I'm honestly genuinely excited. But I'm also excited for the ensemble cast that Dana was talking about. Spider-Man may have one of the biggest casts of supporting characters.
Totally. Like the inclusion of Nico Minoru, who's another favorite, as you might have guessed by the fact that I put her in that House of Harkness Infinity comic that I wrote. She isn't usually a supporting character in the Spidey comics, but she'll be a significant part of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
And if you do not know who this iconic goth queen is, well, we have a comic book breakdown for you.
So you know how, as a teenager, we all have experienced that, like, parents just don't understand, or my parents are the absolute worst.
Preeti, you say as a teenager, decades later, and I still experience angst when I go home for the holidays. Like, I love my dad, but I can only laugh at the same jokes so many times. So many times.
I mean, yes, like bad jokes, you know, things that are grounding you for silly little things, or, you know, finding out that your mom and dad are dark wizard supervillains sacrificing innocent children to ancient gods to bring about the destruction of the world.
Sacrificing innocent children, dark wizards, that's pretty bad, Preeti. I don't think I have it that bad.
Well, that's what happened to Nico Minoru, as you might have guessed, given our introduction to this segment. Nico assumed she was an average Japanese-American teenage goth girl until she and her friends, Alex, Chase, Carolina, Gert, and Molly, accidentally witnessed their parents murdering a young woman in some sort of ritualistic ceremony.
Turns out the kids' folks belonged to a group called the Pride, which had made a pact with ancient beings called the Gibborim by sacrificing an innocent life every 25 years in exchange for immortality and power.
All right, it's actually not that bad of a deal, I guess, if you were pure evil,
Yeah.
Which, while the Pride are, their children are not. In this case, the apple drops like a freaking canyon away from the tree.
So Nico and her friends run away and form a group called, you guessed it, Runaways, which is a very catchy, accurate, and also great band name, by the way.
Right? They should be a band. I feel like it's fully in with like who they are as people.
I can see Alex with like a shredded electric guitar.
The Runaways make it their mission to stop the Pride. But when Nico confronts her parents directly, her mom responds by stabbing Nico in the heart with her magical staff.
So here's the thing. Even after the stabbed in the heart thing, Nico is fine. She ends up instinctively absorbing the staff into her body.
And so she ends up becoming the leader of the Runaways because she's powered by the Staff of One. And that staff turns out to be one of the most powerful magical items on Earth.
And most dangerous because it can cast pretty much any spell you can think of. All you need to do is shout out the effect you want to see and boom, it'll happen.
So like if Nico wants to shoot fireballs, she just holds the staff and shouts, "Fireballs!"
Yeah, exactly. Or if she wants like a hot bowl of mac and cheese, she just yells out hot bowl of mac and cheese. And I'm sure there's a lot you can do with that too. I will say there are catches when it comes to the staff, right? First, the staff is powered by blood magic, meaning that in order to make the staff emerge from her chest, Nico needs to bleed.
I would never use it.
That's fair. It's a pretty intense trade-off, Preeti.
Secondly, the Staff of One can only cast any given spell one time, hence the name. If Nico tries to repeat a spell she's already cast, the staff will go haywire with potentially disastrous results. Luckily, that's only if she recasts a spell with the exact same wording.
Right. So if Nico has already cast fireballs, she'd still be safe whipping out her thesaurus and saying something like flaming spheres or incendiary orbs.
Over time, Nico becomes a master of spell specificity. My favorite is probably the time she wants to ice someone up but has already used the freeze spell. So she says, freeze to the exact temperature and aesthetic appearance of a cheap popsicle from 7-Eleven. Honestly, Charles Dickens would rule with this stuff.
But there are obviously loopholes to this. I mean, this is magic. Magic is full of loopholes. She can repeat the same words if they are in a different language.
In House of Harkness, she needs to teleport to her room, but presumably she has used the room spell before, so I had her say kamra, which is Hindi for room.
That is brilliant, Preeti. If only.
The dream.
The dream, truly. Always teleporting back to my bed. Well, if only her love life was as successful as her mastery of magic, because poor Nico. Girl, she has had a string of bad relationships. First, Nico hooks up with fellow runaway Alex, but that ends badly when Alex betrays her and joins the Pride.
All right, but that breakup is entirely on him.
Agreed, seconded.
Then Nico kisses another teammate, Chase.
But Chase is dating Gert, another teammate, at the same time, so it's not great.
Yeah, it's not great, although we do love Bess.
We kind of live for it. And when Nico moves on and pairs up with a new team member, Victor Mancha, he cheats on her. So maybe just focusing on your teammates as a potential dating pool isn't the best idea.
Well, hold that thought. We are definitely going to come back to that.
Well, meanwhile, Nico travels back in time to be trained by her terrifying grandmother named Witchbreaker.
Training, torture, Witchbreaker might also say semantics.
It is a rough experience, but Nico comes out as a far more capable and adaptable sorceress, now able to cast spells on her own without her staff. So I guess kinda thanks, Grandma. I mean, trauma does build tenacity, maybe?
Comics. Trauma to tenacity. Now, Nico is a wizard to be reckoned with, powerful enough that Doctor Strange once put her into contention as a possible successor to his role as the Sorcerer Supreme.
While she didn't get that job, Doctor Strange did hire her to teach at Strange Academy, which is his school for the young and magically talented, where she teaches, appropriately enough, a class called Creative Spellcasting.
And that's Nico Minoru.
Wait, hang on. You cannot just tease some juicy Runaways drama and not give me a finale. Does Nico ever find love?
Yes! When Nico returns to the Runaway, she finally realizes what had been in her heart all along.
Oh yeah, the Staff of One.
Well, right. Besides that, she and her longtime bestie, Carolina Dean, give in to the feelings they've had for years and fall in love, becoming girlfriends.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to date myself with this, but hashtag couple goals. And also, speaking of trauma to tenacity, neither has to worry about awkwardly meeting the other's parents. Yeah, so that's a superhero win.
Win-win.
With a sad backstory. Yeah.
That is comics in a nutshell.
Yeah. We've spent a lot of time in this episode reflecting on what makes Spider-Man so beloved. He's brave, selfless, and against all odds, never gives up. In Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, number 34, released in 2001, written by J. Michael Straczynski, a psychic vampire named Morlun wants Spider-Man dead. After a particularly vicious fight between the two, Spidey turns to the similarly spider-powered ally Ezekiel Sims for comfort. Unfortunately, Ezekiel doesn't think that there's a way to beat Morlun, to which Spider-Man replies, "I've never asked for much. Like everybody else, I know the odds are always against us. That's just the way the universe works. I don't want guarantees, promises, assurances, or false hopes. All I've ever asked for is one chance to try, to stand on my own feet and give it my best shot. Succeed or fail, live or die, if I know I tried, then I can accept whatever happens."
Next week on the official Marvel podcast, we are joined by friend of the pod and head writer and executive producer for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Jeff Trammell, and supervising director Mel Zwire.
The funny thing is like, regardless of the time, it's always rough being a teenager.
Yeah. I don't know a single teenager who's had it easy.
Until then, make sure you're already subscribed to the podcast so you never miss an episode.
And why not share the podcast with a friend or leave us a review to tell us what you think of the show?
This episode was hosted by the lovely Preeti Chibber and myself, Ray Lowe, featuring Quinn Lamar with additional writing by Christopher Healy.
Our producers are Jasmine Estrada and Anita Flores,
with help from Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development Brad Barton and Production Manager Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Justin Harris.
Theme music by Ida Akbal.
Executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
Thanks for listening and see you next week.